This week we're going to be focusing on parables in Matthew, and so I thought it would be important for us to take a look at perhaps one of Matthew's more distinctive parables. There are many to choose from, but the point is we want to understand how parables work in this particular gospel. They have an edge, they have a shape that is different than parables in the other synoptics. So take a look at Matthew chapter 13, and we'll look at the parable of the net, which is connected to a conversation with the disciples that relates, I think, to Matthew's very particular context, a very different context than, again, Mark or Luke. And you'll see in Matthew 13:47, where Jesus says, once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish. This first sentence, this first bit of phraseology, alerts us to the fact that parables are meant to catch on to the imagery and daily experiences of peasants in Galilee. In fact, Jesus' parables are some of our best primary sources for understanding peasant life, peasant categories, and peasant consciousness. Literature in the ancient world is almost exclusively the domain of the elite, and the Gospels are actually very important for helping us to grasp, life away from elite environments. So people understood fish and fishermen, and those were pulled up. Verse 48 says, when it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. I want to suggest to you that rather than viewing the parables primarily as allegories, where we're looking for symbols within the story that connect to figures and realities outside the story, that rather than functioning as allegories, the parables actually work like jokes. There is a punch in the gut, an unexpected turn at the end of the parable. In this case, the unexpected turn is that in a subsistence economy where people are living hand to mouth and chronic malnourishment is the norm, not the exception, fish are being thrown away. This simply would have not been the way that it worked for people trying to survive, to feed themselves and feed their families. And after that unexpected turn that would have created shock in the minds of Jesus' listeners, he goes on and does something very typical in his teachings, especially his parabolic teachings. He moves toward eschatology. Verse 49, this is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now again, this is all still within the confines of the parable. And we just have to recognize that in the process of interpretation. And verse 51 through 52 is really key to understanding the context of Matthew. Have you understood all these things? Jesus asked. Yes, they replied. Remember in Matthew, unlike Mark, Jesus' disciples do understand things. He said to them, therefore, every teacher of the law who has been instructed about the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. So parables in Jesus' teachings in Matthew are also connected to being an Orthodox Jewish teacher or scribe or Torah expert that has also been instructed in the kingdom of heaven via the teachings and ethic of Jesus. So I hope you'll take some of these ingredients and use them as lenses to read the other parables in Matthew. I trust that will be fruitful for you. If you're looking for any other resources, there are a bunch on parables, and I'm just looking at my shelf here for some of the usual suspects. One of the most foundational studies was by Joachim Jeremias, The Parables of Jesus, that'll get you into the discipline. There's also a book in the What Are They Saying series by Galver, What Are They Saying About the Parables, which will give you a generally scholarly overview that's fairly current. And then finally, my favorite, which is more of a sociological reading, is by Herzog, Parables as Subversive Speech, Jesus as Pedagogue of the Oppressed. So if this connects with your research paper in any way, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to provide for you some ideas about resources. Blessings.